Hello and welcome to this special webinar broadcast to mark World Polio Day 2018 live from the heart of Paris. My name is Almina Ahmed. I'm a broadcast journalist based in Islamabad and London, and I will be moderating today's worldwide physical and virtual events. Now, the main theme for today is the global effort to eradicate polio. Is it time to stop? Some scientists have argued that a great deal of money, time and resource has already been spent on the eradication effort. We have achieved a lot, but now it's time to divert those resources to more pressing health emergencies. So, are they right?
We are extremely close to having eradicated the wild polio virus. We started in 1985 when Rotary International launched its effort in 1985. There were over 125 countries where the wild polio virus was endemic and causing close to 350,000 cases of paralytic disease every year. This year, we've had so far 22 cases caused by the wild polio virus in only 2 countries in the world, in Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we've really reached a stage where we are closer than we've ever been to eradicating the disease. And that's why it is not time to stop this effort. We need to actually go the extra mile, even though we've missed deadlines and we've taken more time than the world expected us to do. We are really have reached such a stage that we cannot stop now. If we were to stop the effort and no longer sort of strive to actually eradicate the wild virus, we could very soon, within a period of 10 years perhaps, sort of have 100,000 or 200,000 cases every year again if we stopped our efforts to eradicate. The partnership that has led us to actually this sort of very close to being able to eradicate the virus has been extraordinary. You know, public sector, private sector, civil society and the countries themselves have taken us thus far. We owe it to the children of the world to actually finish the job.
So Bertika, what questions have we had so far?
Almina, Twitter's buzzing, social media is buzzing with lots of questions coming in, and the first one comes in from Mumbai. So Chitra Subramaniam, she's a renowned journalist over there. She's also written an article recently regarding polio and how the Barbuddin is affecting that in India. So she wants to know, asks Michelle Zafran about polio eradication. It's repeatedly missed its deadlines to achieve success and continues to cost upwards of $1 billion every year for just a handful of cases. Why do you think the deadlines are being missed over and over in the same countries?
Michelle Zafran.
Thank you very much for your question. This is a question that's being asked, and it's legitimate. So, you know, how long is it going to take us to eradicate this virus? It's true that we've missed deadlines. However, we're doing something that has not been done ever in the world. I mean, we've eradicated only one human disease in the past, and that's smallpox. And the polio virus is much more sort of endemic and has been much more difficult to eradicate. We believe it is indeed feasible to do to achieve eradication, and efforts in India, which has been free of polio for 7 years now, have demonstrated that the strategies are correct, the strategies work. We just need more time to actually implement them consistently and continue the fight to find the final places where this virus is hiding.
As you heard, Michelle Zafran said partnership has been key to the success of the GPEI. How is Sanofi Pasteur supporting this initiative?
Well, first of all, I think partnership is a key word because we all need to work together. And I must say, I'm very proud of Sanofi Pasteur having been able to contribute in such an important fashion. We have shipped more than 6 billion oral vaccine doses. I mean, you have to imagine what this is in terms of volumes. It's gigantic. And also, very importantly, we have developed in the past now with Dr. Salk the injectable inactivated polio vaccine, which is ultimately going to be required to achieve the full eradication of that disease.
Well, you mentioned that IPV will be the only vaccine, to keep the world polio free. How will Sanofi Pasteur ensure that countries adopt the IPV?
I think we need to work together with, WHO in terms of the adoption. But what is also playing an important role, and this is where I'm a little bit worried coming from an industrial perspective, is that we need to make sure that we have an environment where there is long-term predictability of volumes and prices for the industry. Because, when you think about as an industrial, you need 6 years to build a new plant. So when you have capacity steps that you need to take, from the decision point that you take the decision, you need more capacity. It takes you 6 years to build the plant. And so in order to be able then to have this predictability, I think UNICEF needs to think about different buying mechanisms to provide a longer term guarantee to industry. So I'm a little bit worried that we are today in an environment where this is not yet fully the case. And I would encourage us all to think about the mechanisms. Only this can give the investment that the industry has to do. And we are betting with the current plan, perhaps a little bit too much on new players and new technologies, which is a certain risk that we are taking.
Now, we've been looking at the macro level perspective of the fight against polio, but now I'd like to turn to each of the 3 remaining endemic countries, and Afghanistan is one of them.
Afghanistan, Pakistan, along with Nigeria, are only 3 remaining polio endemic countries. It's a complex humanitarian emergency situation. There are issues related to access, security. Despite those issues, Afghanistan has made tremendous progress. The extent of transmission has limited very much geographically. It is focused to 2 provinces in the east region and 2 provinces in the south region. We see very good community acceptance of polio vaccine. Having said that, there are small pockets, particularly in South region, Kandahar province, where people are refusing vaccine. And Afghanistan program has a solid strategy in place to address that. We are engaging religious leaders and even tribal elders, community leaders for helping us to reach those communities which are not so readily accepting the vaccine. Afghanistan and Pakistan together, they form one epidemiological bloc. So they have very shared epidemiology. If Afghanistan and Pakistan have to eradicate polio, both of countries have to do it together. And therefore, it's very important that whole global community should continue its focus on stopping transmission in these 2 countries. We are very, very close. We have reached very far. And we know that where transmission is and why the transmission is there and what is needed to stop that.
This one comes in from Kabul, and this is Abdur Razik. He wants to know, by closing the borders, will we have better results, or is there more ways to handle the problem?
Clearly, borders cannot be closed for very long. Maybe I doubt that there is such a situation anywhere in the world where you can just close down the borders. Between Pakistan and Afghanistan, as we mentioned earlier, there are several points at which we have polio teams posted. And they are posted there throughout the year, not just at campaign time.
हाँ, इसमें हमारी काफ़ी तब्दीलियाँ आई हैं, क्योंकि पहले हम जब पोलियो वैक्सीन के लिए जाते थे तो तकरीबन लोग हमसे बच्चे छुपा देते थे और हमें मतलब बात करना तक हमारे साथ गवारा नहीं करते थे। अब ये है कि मीडिया के ज़रिए और हमारी भी कोशिशों की वजह से लोगों को इतनी अवेयरनेस हो गई है कि वो समझते हैं कि ये लाजमी है, क्योंकि ये बच्चों को मूजी मर्ज से बचाते हैं पोलियो वैक्सीन। तो इसलिए तकरीबन लोग अब खुशी से हमें मतलब बुलाते भी हैं और हमारे साथ तावन भी करते हैं।
My name is Syed Kalbe Mohammed, and my question is from Dr. Roland. There is a cross-border migration between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and this is the big problem of polio for the control of this cross-border migration, because still Pakistan and Afghan government are failed to control this cross-border migration, and this is the cause of the polio in Pakistan also.
I think the program has been very diligent in establishing border vaccination posts on both sides to vaccinate these border crossers.
We need to be more supportive to our friends in Afghanistan so that they can reach the children which are being missed out, especially in Kandahar and the adjoining provinces, because that virus samples are seen in the sewerage and environment samples of Pakistan. And we hope that we will be able to overcome this challenge also.
A question from Nairobi in Kenya.
My name is Caroline. I work for the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. I would just like to find out, there has been concern that children are being vaccinated too many times. So is it possible for like WHO to come up with just one vaccine so that children can be vaccinated only once and not the many times that is carrying mothers in the country? Yeah.
I realize that, sometimes it appears that the children are being vaccinated too many times, but it's because we are missing pockets of children, and we therefore must sort of continue the efforts to reach the most remote children, even in the most sort of isolated places, to avoid that the virus continues to survive. It is how the eradication effort was successful in India.
Now, next year, everyone is expecting Africa to be declared polio-free. And if it happens, that would be a momentous milestone, to say the least.
In West Africa, let's take the very specific example of Nigeria. We're facing almost a similar situation than what we have in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And what I would like to say here is that probably the big story about the end of polio, the eradication, is for us, the big challenge is for us to access every area. And in Nigeria, as well as in Pakistan and Afghanistan, we do have such areas where we cannot go so far.
So I believe we have a question from a journalist in Yaoundé in Cameroon.
So I would like to know if the oral vaccine cannot bring back the virus in Cameroon, which has virtually eradicated the disease. Thank you.
The concern is that the virus that is in the oral vaccine is a live attenuated virus, and it can mutate to a more virulent form and can indeed, in very rare instances, cause outbreaks. The main risk factor for this to happen is really low population immunity, meaning low vaccination coverage in areas. So the virus can be transmitted from vaccinees to non-vaccinees and so on, and then take off. So the main measure to prevent this is really to ensure very high vaccination coverage.
Now, we're talking about these ambitious plans to eradicate polio and keep the world polio-free, but we often forget that this is only possible with a reliable supply of vaccines.
Suppliers needing a certain amount of robustness, a certain amount of commitment for over 15, 20 or more years in order to justify the capacities. And so one of the things we've been working on is ways to cut through this dilemma, this catch-22 situation, by creating new types of contractual arrangements between the suppliers and the purchasing organizations that find a sweet spot between, on the one hand, the difficulty that the purchasers have to make commitments, and on the other hand, the suppliers need to have not perfect commitments, but reasonable commitments to justify their investments.
Well, I think it's the perfect moment to bring in David Love, head of Sanofi Pasteur. David, Professor Avi Federgrun was saying that incorrectly managing vaccine supplies could put the world at risk. Is he right?
Yeah, unfortunately, he is right. Because, if we don't manage to get enough IPV doses out, that quest of eradicating polio is going to be in danger. We have heard a lot of concerns on the oral polio, and we want to move to the injectable polio version. But we need to realize that this needs a certain amount of security for those who invest. And when you're at the brink of the eradication and you're not totally sure what's going to happen after that, you need to set out, and he mentioned it, that the donors have this difficulty of setting out a long-term carrot for the industry. And I think we need to achieve that. If not, indeed, that fantastic project is a bit in danger.
Is it correct to say that 30 years ago it was much more easier to supply developing countries with vaccines, and it's become much more complicated these days? And if that is correct, why would you say that's the situation?
Yeah, I would say it is correct for two reasons. One, the regulators have significantly raised the bar, and I think that's a good thing, because we want to be 100% sure that we develop, the vaccines which have the top-notch quality and safety standards, and we supervise when they are being given with pharmacovigilance, so we know what's going on. So that's very important. That increases, of course, the costs and also the burden on how we distribute those vaccines. The second piece is that the sheer volume has gone up. So now, with the quest of eradicating polio, we try, and you heard that, to vaccinate every child in the world with several doses. So that means the volumes have gone up quite significantly. So yes, I would say it's much more difficult than 30 years ago.
How many years, how many decades do we need to continue with vaccination to ensure that the polio doesn't come back out of other places which are reservoirs?
Within 1 year, approximately 1 year, 1.5 years after certification of the eradication of the wild virus, we will stop altogether worldwide the use of the oral polio vaccine and only rely on the inactivated poliovirus vaccine for protecting populations. And the Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization that advises the Director General of WHO has recommended that vaccination against polio with the inactivated poliovirus vaccine should continue for at least 10 years after the cessation, the removal of the oral polio vaccine.
Is polio eradication worth it? Billions and billions of dollars have been spent. Wouldn't it be better spending that money on other pressing health emergencies, for example, malaria?
If we were to stop polio eradication activities now, we would have to figure out how to go forward in terms of our vaccination strategies. Would we try to continue with OPV? Would we try to go forward with IPV, but still allow live poliovirus transmission to occur and children to be paralyzed by viruses that we could stop? I think the question for us is, what would we stop before we get to the finish line? Or should we try to make it all the way there? And we can get there. We just have to find the right strategies and stay committed.
What would you say are the economic and human benefits of ensuring robust vaccine routine coverage even after we've achieved polio eradication?
Routine immunization provides a huge benefit to all children. It protects them from so many vaccine preventable diseases. One of the most important things about the polio program is it did have a huge effect in bringing vaccination into some areas, some communities that were not getting any vaccination at all. And what we need to do now is translate all of those activities into strengthening the routine systems everywhere so that those children continue to benefit.
I interviewed Judith Diamond, who's the UK National Advocacy Advisor for Polio and the coordinator of the Global Polio Advocacy Task Force at Rotary International. I began by asking her how Rotary has supported efforts to eradicate the disease.
Rotary's role in the programme is threefold. Advocacy for the programme to governments and donors, fundraising, and to date we've raised $1.8 billion for the programme, and probably most importantly, volunteers on the ground helping with the immunisation days in countries. We're supporting 16 fragile states currently, and in particular 3 endemic countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan and Nigeria.
Polio survivors form part of our team to show themselves as an example of what happens if a child is not immunized. We also have groups like Journalists Against Polio who help us to disseminate the need to have children immunized.
Because we are local in communities, you have the trust of people. And this programme is all about trust, because there's a lot of misinformation, as we know, in the world about everything, including vaccinations. And it's very important to build up the trust.
Now, we're now coming to the end of this special polio webcast and addressing the question about whether it's time to stop the fight against polio or not. I'd like to ask the final question to Michelle Safran, who's the Director of Polio Eradication at WHO. Michelle, I'd like to ask you that, honestly speaking, if we all gather here again next year for World Polio Day 2019, and there are still cases of wild polio virus, surely then, shouldn't that be the time that we say enough and give up?
If we sort of stop our efforts, very rapidly this virus will start circulating and cause disease all over the world, including in Europe, where we know that many people are not vaccinated. The world has come so close to eradicating polio. In 30 years, of course, which is a long time, we've built an extraordinary partnership which has brought the world very close to eradicating polio. We've gone from 350,000 cases every year to a handful of cases in only 2 countries this year. We can finish the job. We can eradicate the disease and reap the benefits of a world free of polio. We can leave a world free of polio to our children so that no one ever again is sort of afraid of contracting this dreadful disease. So I don't think we should stop our efforts. I think we should go the extra mile. It may take 1 year, it may take 2 years, but we will indeed eradicate the disease and sort of leave this sort of a legacy to our children and grandchildren.